Hi, this is Mark Roemke with Pathways Dojos and Ninja in Nature. And you can check those out at pathwaysdojo.com or ninjasinnature.com. And this is our installment number 2 Ninja Mentoring series of how I found ninjutsu. So first series was how I found martial arts. This is the second series of how I came across the ninja. And so this is a really cool story. I had seen Stephen K. Hayes. He has a bunch of books written on the ninja. And back in the 80s, there was a big ninja boom. And people were obsessed with the ninja. The movies were out. People had all these ideas of what a ninja was. And I was very curious myself, but I just thought they were kind of like stories, or maybe there was these guys in Japan somewhere that looked like a special forces unit or something like that. But what we ended up doing is I was training in this other martial art, and we were training at the university. And at the university where I grew up in Albany, New York, there had multiple rooms, like a wrestling room, workout room, all this stuff. We ended up being in this one room, and then I went to go to the bathroom one night, and I walked through a secondary kind of wrestling room. There's these guys in the corner, way out in the corner. They were putting in each other in these weird arm locks and doing dive rolls, and they were all wearing black. And I was like, huh. So I'm not too shy. I just went up and walked up to them, and I was like, wow, what are you guys doing? That looks really cool. Can you teach me that thing I just saw? And they did. And they were like, well, this is called ninjutsu. And I'm like the ninja? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I got a book by Stephen Hayes. And like, I was always wondered about the ninja. And they were all like, well, this is it. This is the real deal. And so the guy who was there teaching was like, well, I go to Japan to go train with Hatsumi, and he's the Grand Master. I'm like, oh yeah, I read about him. And he goes, well, why don't you start joining our group? Right as I'm talking to these guys, just about to dial it in, my other instructor walks in and he's like, hey, get over here. You don't do other arts, get over here. And then he gives me this like talking to. And that's when I kind of went, whoa, wait a second. Why is he so protective of me, like going to do this other thing? Anyway, I stuck back in there after class and got their name and number. And of course we hooked up. And so that's when my real ninja training began. And these guys trained really fun. We did the real deal stuff, dive rolls over picnic tables, and we were doing all sorts of things with ninjutsu. And I got my first taste of curriculums and like what there were and syllabuses and how to do this. And then we went around after we had been there for like 3 to 6 months. We started putting on demonstrations at different places, and it just became unreal. And so that was my introduction to ninjutsu. But I was blessed to have that one teacher because he had been to Japan and had been there so much. He spoke Japanese. He was like really in with these guys on a deeper level. And so I got a really deep saturation into like what real ninjutsu was. And I was getting it directly from, a first source that had been to Japan to train with Hatsumi and then had brought it back. And so that was just amazing for me to find out those moves and to start to get into that entire thing, because we did all sorts of things that were other than just the mat moves. We started going out and doing like shooting and archery and some of the other things too. And I was like, oh man, this is what I've been waiting for, like art with all these weapons and stuff. And so that's where I was still taking my first art. I had started a second art, Kempo Kung Fu, and I tried a little bit of Okinawan karate as well. And then I found ninjutsu, and I was like, ooh, there's something different here. It was like a PhD level course that had been opened up to me. And if I wouldn't have studied some of the other ones at first, maybe I wouldn't have had the structure in my mind to be able to know how good it was. But once you've been with a teacher, and that teacher's really good, but then you meet a really good teacher, and then you're like, oh, whoa, there's a difference between that teacher and this teacher. And so I started to really grok more of like a depth of martial arts in general. And so that was really fun for me. So that was how I originally got introduced to ninjutsu, but I hadn't met Hatsumi Sensei yet. And so after I got out of the military, I decided I was going to move to California. And when I moved to California, that's when I met my second ninjutsu instructor. And that instructor was a great instructor as well. He also did energy and healing work. But he said within the first 6 months to a year, he's like, we have to go meet Hatsumi, start saving up your money. And that's when I was like, whoa, you can meet Hatsumi? You can actually go to Japan? And he was like, yeah. And so he was the first person to bring me to see Hatsumi Sensei. And then when we went to Japan, oh man, that's when it opened up. Like we stayed in this Roemke hotel that was right down the street from Hatsumi's house. And I couldn't sleep because of jet lag. And one of the first nights I go walking at like 4 in the morning their time because I was just like, I'm all energized, I can't sleep. And Hatsumi pops out of his door and goes, hey, how's it going? Are you Bujin Kanen? I said, yes, Sensei. He goes, oh, come on in, I'll get you some tea. And I'm like, little green belt guy in Japan by myself, and I'm getting introduced into the Grandmaster's house to meet him, and it was so cool. He had a couch with like swords all stacked behind it, like hundreds of swords. He had pictures on the wall from the Queen of England signed, thanks for training our troops. President Ford, Carter, Reagan, the Queen of England. I mean, it was just unreal. All these special forces, FBI, CIA, things like, thanks for training our troops. And I was like, wow, this is the real deal. Like, these guys are it. And then he just came back with tea and he's like, oh, so tell me about yourself and what do you like to do? And he just kind of chatted with me, and it was just so amazing to meet like the lineage holder of this ancient art that I had been introduced to through books and all of this other stuff. But that's when the fire really got lit in me, where I was like, whoa, I'm part of something ancient here in this lineage. And that's when my training went to the next level. After I met the Grandmaster and started going to Japan, it really started to change my thing, because once you go to Japan and you've been with like that master teacher, you just like want more of that. And so I was lucky enough to get him when he was in his younger days and was training super heavy and hard, and now that's my turn to share that with my students as well. So I get to show them what it's like, because I put so much time and so much effort into learning this art. Now I get to give it back. And so I hope you enjoyed this episode of how I found ninjutsu. And I really want to get into, on our next episode, how I formed Pathways Dojo and Ninjas in Nature, and how that all came about, and why we're doing this whole thing. So this is Mark Roemke with Pathways Dojo and Ninjas in Nature. Please check us out at pathwaysdojo.com or ninjasinnature.com. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'll see you on episode number 3.